If I ruled the world.
All right, hello, and welcome to If I Ruled the World podcast. And we are sitting here. Well, actually, we're not sitting here. Me and Sam are sitting here, and we're actually doing our very first phone call to the producer of a film we've been hearing about called Once Upon a Superhero. This producer's name is Scott Weil, and he's on the phone right now. He's in L.A., as producers are sometimes. Why don't you say hi, Scott?
Hey, George and Sam. How you guys doing?
Great, man. Thanks for popping our phone cherry.
Yeah. We had to do a little bit of figuring out with how this works, and it turned out to be way simpler than we thought. And we were just complicating it with our brains to try and figure this out until we pulled out some wires, and the phone call went through. No problem.
Yeah.
So I'm like a pioneer. I can help get other people from Long Island that are not doing things in Long Island now on your phone system. This is great.
You're bi-coastal. You're conquering both coasts, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, I mean, obviously face-to-face is always the best, but, you know, when we're living on different coasts and we have a movie to promote, I think this is pretty doable, and you're sounding pretty crystal clear.
Yeah. So, Scott, let's jump right into it because you and I have been talking a little bit, but I got to see the trailers. I know the showings are coming up on Long Island, and that's what we're here to promote. So let's just start right in with, you could just break down what this movie's about.
The film is about a self-proclaimed homeless wanderer by the name of Solar Flare, who has been exiled to Earth without his superpowers. And as he begins to meet the underbelly of Hollywood, he goes into a loss of self and confusion as he awaits the return of his superpowers.
You're the producer of this film. We know that you're actually from Long Island. You live out in L.A. There's been some premieres out there, but I just want to get out your premieres that are going on Long Island up front. April 6th at Cult Cafe in Huntington and April 7th at, what's the name of the theater in Belmore?
It's called Belmore Movies, and it's right under the train tracks off Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Friday night showing is part of the Cult Cafe series. We will be showing there. That's in Huntington at the Cinema Arts Center at 10 o'clock. Yeah. If you arrive a little bit early, we're going to be doing some cool stuff, showing some uncut footage, doing a little meet and greet and telling a little bit about the film in person. And then the following night, Saturday night, we're doing a special engagement at Belmore Movies, and that'll be at 9:30 p.m. And looking forward to them both a lot, especially being from Oceanside, New York, and having lived in Long Beach for a while in my life, too.
Nice.
Yeah, Matt Roran, like our friend Matt Roran, does all these Cinema Arts Center stuff. I think he does the Cold Cafe stuff.
Oh, I didn't know you guys knew. Yeah, Matt is the one who me and him have talked. He's the one putting on the show at Cinema Arts Cafe.
Absolutely. He's a good friend of mine and George's, and just from like the music scene. And he started working at that Cinema Arts place, and that's where I go to movie trivia. And it's one of those local treasures that we have. They do a lot of really cool stuff there. So it's, I think, a perfect spot for you to have that movie screen.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And out here in LA, we have a cult movie scene. But Long Island, sometimes it's a little bit, you got to dig for it. I started to do some research and I saw the Cult Cafe, and Once Upon a Superhero is very much a cult type of movie. If people go into this movie thinking they're going to see a Marvel movie, they might be disappointed. If they understand this is a cult film, I think they'll be anything but disappointed. Yeah. But Matt saw what he was programming there, and the audience that would go see those types of films, something like Ichi the Killer, something like Eraserhead, things of those nature, I think are definitely potential people that would dig what we did with Once Upon a Superhero.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, what we spoke about before we turned the mics on was the origin kind of is like a midnight movie type thing, right?
Yeah, we actually premiered in Los Angeles at midnight on February 3rd at the famous Vista Theater out here. And I don't know if you guys are into True Romance at all.
That's one of the best movies ever.
Exactly. If you know the scene early on where Alabama Whirly, and what's Christian Slater's character's name? Clarence. Clarence Whirly. When they're sitting on top of the marquee at the movie theater, that's actually the Vista Theater.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful theater. The staff was fantastic. We had a great premiere. Everybody really enjoyed it. Great sound system in there, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But yeah, for us being out there and doing a traditional premiere at a theater like that was a lot of fun. And as far as the other theater I wanted to mention, the Belmore showing is actually my cousin's theater.
Oh, okay.
And we did a short film 5 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, right before we started pre-production on Once Upon a Superhero, that played. We did a few film festival showings, and one of them was the Long Island Film Festival, which was at Belmore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to come back a few years later now with a feature.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's super convenient to have a relative with a movie theater. That's definitely how.
In your line of business.
Absolutely.
Well, not only that, but what are the odds that on Long Island, not only my relative, but they happen to have a real art house movie theater, not an AMC or a Low, but a real place that people can see true independent cinema for everybody who's sick of Avengers 36 or whatever they're on, Spider-Man 91. They can go see something really original like Once Upon a Superhero, which I think is we need more of, not less.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I always say the same thing. It's like unless you love superhero movies, I mean, not like you mentioned Marvel or like cartoons for kids. It's almost like the movies are just shrinking, and it's harder to find things that aren't, I don't know, just like regurgitated crap. So certain places that do play, like in Manhattan, like they always had those theaters off the beaten path that would play these like just random indie flicks, and that's like the lifeblood. I love places like that, and I'll take a chance. I'll take a chance. Like I think A24 is a company that's doing a lot of like cool stuff like that. That even if I don't like a certain type of movie that they put out, I love that these places exist and these companies exist, and they're trying to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. A24 is a good one. This movie is so raw and so uncompromised. We had to keep it away from studios, is what we realized at the end of the day. To keep it uncompromised and the way we wanted people to see Once Upon a Superhero. And it was something that we had to go that particular route, which is why we started in the beginning this particular self-distribution and why we brought it out this particular way.
That's what it seemed like to me. I mean, just talking to you, even watching your trailer, it felt like you're going for something, a cult classic. You were even talking a little bit about, and you sort of breezed past it when we talked on the phone of, spaghetti Western. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your total approach to this movie, how it differs from all the other movies that you don't want to be like. And you're from LA, and probably you're around a lot of different types of people that want to be in the movie industry.
Yeah, we John Klein, my producing partner and the guy that wrote and directed this film, has a huge history with a lot of different cinema, Asian cult cinema, old spaghetti westerns, things of that sort. Once Upon a Superhero is really it's the first spaghetti western of the superhero genre. And for your audience that may have heard the term or not totally familiar with it, what happened is around the late 60s, they had westerns coming out, Western, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne. And out of that started to be born these films that were low budget, had no star attraction names, and increasingly bizarre storylines. Mm-hmm. And out of that was born the spaghetti Western, because basically what happened was Hollywood killed the Western. Where do you see a Western anymore unless Tarantino is doing, something like Hateful Eight? Right. You don't see them anymore. And what are they doing to the superhero movie right now? they're doing the same thing to the superhero that they did to the Western. They are killing it. And we saw something there, and then John wrote a brilliant script and began to take on this process. And there was a reason, a lot of people talk about doing things. I knew John would follow through with it. Right. And he has a long history as an underground street artist out here in LA. He was one of the pioneers in the legalization of marijuana movement with his company Fat Nugs. So he already had a reputation. We had done some early on music videos for a local band, the Chimps, out here. And that kind of evolved. It was a music videos into a short film, into Once Upon a Superhero. And that was really our journey to this point.
And what was it about the script that you just wanted to be attached to?
Because of the way we were doing it and it being completely self-funded, we had to do something that was, we came into this wanting to push the bounds of independent cinema. Mm-hmm. We wanted to make something that looked on screen in terms of quality and style as good as anything you would see put out by A24 or any of the big boy companies. What was really interesting is when we started to make this film, and I'm sure you guys as music guys can relate to this, obviously technology is always evolving constantly. It was right around the time Red came out with the Red Scarlet. And it was the first, smaller camera that was kind of affordable that could shoot in 4K. And that really began the process. We knew from that point it was like the perfect time of technology merging into an affordable place where we can make something in a quality basis and put the right players behind it. And we got very, very lucky with an extremely talented team of people that would normally be paid a lot more to do what they did for us, and for the film. Our cinematographer, Matt Louie, is just really unbelievable. Our editor, Baba Brooke Giacatti Peters, his work is amazing in the film. And it was just done, and we got lucky from both of from the standpoint of who we got to act in it as well as work behind the scenes in it.
That sounds great. I mean, is it exciting for you, I guess, now with technology that you can get a camera like that, and as long as you have like a strong script like this movie seems to have, that if you like it's almost like this like DIY effort, with everyone that finds like a project so passionate that they're willing to dedicate time to making something like this.
It's a double-edged sword. I think it's great because it gives people the capabilities you don't get better at something unless you're doing it. Everything is a craft, and everything is something that's constantly evolving and something that you're working at. Okay. So, it gives people the opportunity to be behind the camera. Mm-hmm. One of the first bits of advice I give people that ask me, where do I start, whether they're an actor or this or that, I tell them, hey, find somebody that's even a 5 or 7D. It doesn't even matter the quality. Pool together $500,000, film something, and you'll just learn so much just from that alone.
Right.
We didn't start with a feature. We started messing around. It was 7-8 years really building. And John has a great artistic eye and a lot of talent. And that was one of the things that drew me into doing the project with him. I knew him on a personal basis as an artist long before this film. And, you got to align yourself with the right people.
So it sounds like, when you talk about your relationship with John, a lot of the stuff in this project came together organically. And I'm wondering how that works then when you get your cast. Was it as organic with all of those actors, or did you have to go through casting and a lot of auditions and stuff?
It was very organic, and it was very interesting time period. John and I were managing the building that we were living in. He and I are also roommates. This entire movie was made out of our apartment. And when we began doing this, we were also building managers, so we were friends with a lot of people in the building, and being right in the center of Hollywood, a lot of the people are actors or in the industry.
Right.
A lot of them were friends of ours, and he began to write a script based around the central character, Solar Flare,
Mm-hmm.
but utilizing the talent that we had and people willing to do favors for us and love the script also and believed in the film and the project. And it was made by a group of people that we were all friends.
Right.
So it was a very cool experience like that, and I don't think I'll probably ever make a movie that unique again or produce a movie that unique again in my lifetime.
Right.
Just because of the way it was very organic, like you said. And that really is how the process, right from it being originally a short film that wound up being almost a 2-hour feature.
Right.
Is a short film almost like a long trailer to have a movie made? Does that help?
I think people do it in a lot of different ways, and I think it's also evolved since we did this film. You know, what's interesting is the whole industry changed while we made this movie. It's fascinating because when we started, it was still the studio system. You brought up A24 earlier. A24 wasn't even up and really, I think, on the radar yet in 2012, 13 when we were in production of this film. It went from the traditional studio system to streaming. Like Netflix wasn't even as big when we started this. So the model of Hollywood in general changed dramatically in the 4 or 5 years we were making this movie. This movie's almost 5 years in the making.
Right.
Do you think
so?
Do you think it
what's
changed,
that?
Do you think it changed for the better or the worse?
I think we're still understanding how it's evolving. I think it's hard to say just yet. I don't think it's a bad thing anytime people can get their products on multiple platforms. But the problem and the truth of the matter is a place like Netflix does not pay real independent films a lot of money.
Right.
It depends how you want to do it. That's where it becomes tricky, is understanding your business model and understanding how to sell your film. You know, the thing with us is we knew who would probably dig this film. People that liked cult cinema, people that liked real art house movies are going to probably dig Once Upon a Superhero, you know? But it's a matter of understanding and knowing your audience. Those are way broader audiences, so I think it's cool that people can get their stuff there. But I think we, in particular, have something that's more in a very hot genre, which is obviously the superhero genre, and takes it into a place that I don't think it's been before.
You know, a lot of the people we talk to are musicians, and a lot of what you're saying reminds me of how artists work. You know, they got to ask their friends for studio to help them out with this and studio time. And then once we put out a record or something like that, then it's how to get that record out to the rest of the world. So how does it work with you? Because you're physically bringing it to locations. So what is the steps, you know, maybe that have happened so far besides the LA premiere and the future, how this works?
Well, we did, we did the LA premiere, and we followed that up with very unique shows. We're looking to not only show this film in traditional theaters, but also different kinds of venues that, for instance, out here in Los Angeles, pot is legal and people can smoke. We found this underground venue where we had people that could sell weed inside and our audience could. The film is very psychedelic in parts too.
Right.
So of course you don't have to be a stoner to enjoy the film, but it's certainly
it's good that you put that out there for your Long Island people who haven't seen it yet. Just a little tip off of, you know, the state you might want to enter the Belmore.
So the 420 friendly listeners of the cast, feel free to smoke your fucking asses off prior to the show.
Spend a few extra minutes in the parking lot before you walk into the door.
Exactly.
The Cold Cafe is not going to mind.
Well, the Cult Cafe actually will be selling beer there, which is always good. So yeah, our audience out here in LA, they were able to drink and smoke and partake if they chose. And we have only shown at midnight so far. So also Long Island is going to be the first time Once Upon a Superhero is shown earlier than midnight,
right?
Because obviously I had to accommodate for for our Long Island audience, right?
People that want to go to bed early, I guess.
Well, you know, I just don't think they have the same cult cinema scene, and it doesn't have a midnight movie audience. Brooklyn does,
right.
Manhattan does. But it's great. I'm glad there's a cinephile community in Long Island, and we're really excited to bring it. For us right now, it's really about giving people the chance to see it. We're taking a very grassroots approach. Our Instagram has been very organic and grassroots, and even in that, we've gotten messages from all over the world. People from South America, the Middle East, Asia,
Wow.
asking us about the film, how they can see it. So it's I find it really interesting that it's obviously connecting with people in a certain way, and I think because the visuals of the movie and all of these new costumes and things people haven't seen before,
Yeah.
they're digging it and inquiring about it.
I think it's just a very unique plot.
Mm-hmm.
And the trailer, when I watched the trailer, it looked great.
I want to know more. The trailers are great.
Yeah, the quality of the trailer was fantastic, and the plot of the movie just kind of sells it for, it's a lot of times things have been done, and when I was reading the plot, I was like, oh, that's an interesting take, Just real quick, Scott, I don't really know, what does a producer do on a film?
Well, I think a lot of movies do a lot of different things, and depending on their budget, depending on what their availability is as far as finances, accessibility to different things, you might see 10 to 18 producers on a film. With Once Upon a Superhero, it was basically John and I, and John worked on every single facet of the film. And for me, it was just being hands-on in every single part, whether it was casting, whether it was location scouting, whether it was making sure everybody's schedules matched up, contacting the media. It's been a 3-step process. It was the build-up to when we began filming. It was the time period that we were filming, and then it's the post-production time period. And so each one encounters a lot of different daily things. And when you don't have the resources or budget of Paramount or studio films, and you want to do something and nobody's in your head except yourself, only you understand how to get the message of what you were trying to get the film out to. And so you can only really rely on yourselves to a point, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And is this the first movie that you've ever been a producer on?
The first feature film, yes.
I mean, is that something that you always wanted to do? What got you into the movie business?
I always wanted to do stuff and had toyed with, different aspects, whether it was acting or messing around behind. John and I had been friends for a long time, and I had moved back to New York for a couple of years. And when I came back to Los Angeles, he and I, we began talking, and we moved into an apartment together. We had stayed friends. And he was like, hey, listen, I've written a bunch of scripts. I want to self-fund it. I don't want to go the studio route. I hate studio films. I want to make cool stuff. And, I want you to produce it. I've had a career running different entities or what have not. And that kind of started our journey. I started reading a couple of the scripts and looking at ones that I would be interested in producing with him. And we had actually started a film that we were all the way up to almost the point we were going to shoot. This was maybe within a year before we started Once Upon a Superhero. And we had the whole thing casted. We had table reads, and something just didn't feel right in the 11th hour. And we literally just pulled the plug.
Wow.
And it's interesting. It was a blow, and we just realized the people that we had casted, it just wasn't right. And the one thing we always had agreed on was 1 weak link can ruin a film. If everybody isn't in their right place, and if it's not casted properly, sometimes it's not somebody being a bad actor. It's just not the right fit. You know what I mean? It could be so many different things.
You have this script, you have this movie just in general, and you start doing your thing. It's got to be crazy to just look at it and be like, it's completely all wrong. Like you could write a song, you could record a song that's only like 3 minutes, and you could just be like, shit, it wasn't really what I had envisioned.
Right.
But a movie is just, it seems like the biggest undertaking that you would have to scrap. So.
But you know what? It was depressing. One thing I realized, it was depressing at the time, but it continued to build on the short film. It continued to show us where we can get away with not putting a lot of money into this, but okay, we've got to put money into this. It started to show us things that set the stage. Once Upon a Superhero wouldn't have the same quality that it does if we didn't go through those journeys that didn't pan out together also. So when I look at the whole picture, it was all part of the road, and it was an important part of the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have no regrets. It was all meant to be in the bigger picture, and I think it showed me a lot. I learned a lot as a producer, even though we never made that film. The short film that we did, the music video, and the almost feature that we made prior to this taught me more than I could have learned in any school or anything, period.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you say, I almost hear through the filter of being a musician. All of us, on this side, and probably a lot of our audience have done records, so they know what that's like. And you make an album, maybe you have to re-record something. So what I'm getting a lot from you, though, which I can really, really appreciate, is your integrity. I mean, you set out with this, and you wanted it to be a certain thing, and if it wasn't going to be, not only did you restart it, but you just kept on this path, and that's really something. I don't know much about your industry, but it doesn't seem like that's the common thing. Am I wrong in that?
I hear a lot of different stories. I think everybody does their own journey, and there were times when we were filming this where we had major roadblocks in the middle of it, and things that set back production 3 months or 4 months, and then you got to go recast or. Exactly. Like, hey, could you send us a little of your money and we can get our movie done a lot faster? But you start to go through those things. But what's interesting is at the time, it's like, oh man, that was such a blow, or this actor didn't work out. We got to replace this, or we need to do this. And at the time, it might set it back 3-4 months. But what's interesting is when I look back at it now, it made the film change, and every one of those things made the film stronger and better. Whether it was something that had happened when we were like literally mid-shooting that backed us up 4 months, we had to recast a part. But what it did is actually John went back and rewrote parts of the script that changed the complexion of the entire film for the better. I think it's a lot more of a even layered and interesting film than it already was.
But it's impressive because there's probably a lot of films that stopped because of those roadblocks, and they didn't get back up there. There's probably a lot of dead bodies out there of films that did not make it because of all of these roadblocks.
Are you and John like on the same page, like as far as influence wise, like for this movie? Like the direction. Like, do you guys find that you guys like the same types of movies, same type of approach?
Well, John is a way, way deeper cinephile than I ever was or will be. John really grew up. Anyway, I really hope, some of your audience gets out to see this movie. When people ask me what genre it is, for me, it's so hard to answer because I know him so well and I understand his influences. And he grew up watching so much, to this day, hours and hours of film that... it comes from a different place, but he and I share a lot of the same tastes and sense of humor, things of that sort. We both are total stoners. The movie was made to, and not that anybody has to be stoned, but I would certainly, like I said, it was made with some psychedelia to it. And, so we're both influenced in that place a little bit. And I think it's really a well-rounded experience. It's not, this film was not made necessarily in the sense to watch Home Alone. It was meant to be watched in a theater, experiencing it with people the way a movie theater used to be. Do you get what I'm saying? You remember when we used to really go to movies together? And, it even blows my mind today. Like, I think of movies in the 80s felt so much more cinematic than the stuff I watch today.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I have to think to myself, like, is it just me being nostalgic? Is it just the fact that these movies have sat with me longer? Or maybe they're just better. I don't know. It's hard to really, because I romanticize, if I think of the Goonies, I'm going to romanticize it, and somebody might pick that movie up today that's like 12 years old, and they would just be like, oh, this is terrible.
I would hope not. That would make me really sad.
I know, but you never know. I don't know. I guess people just get used to what they're used to. But those 80s movies,
Well, first of all, just if you were a kid and you see the locations they used on the Goonies, which they shot up in Oregon, and it's so beautiful, the coastline shots and all that, and all those cool places those kids get to play. How can any 12-year-old now, even if you're addicted to your Xbox, want to do that?
Yeah, no, I completely, I'm hoping with you. And what I just heard recently was that when they, at the end, when they revealed the pirate ship, sorry to anyone who hasn't seen it, we just spoiled it for you, but at the end when they see the pirate ship, that Richard Donner wanted them to have a real reaction, so they kept them away from the actual ship, and then he filmed their real reaction when they were in the water and they see that ship for the first time.
Well, I didn't even know that either. So
he's always full of trivia. Our friend Sam over there. But a movie theater experience is just a different experience, and it's probably harder to get people into the theater all the time. But we're all looking at small screens, and then when you get into a theater and it's just big and it's organic, it's like going to see a live band. You forget. And then you go see a band. You're like, that was awesome. You just kind of forget because you've been watching YouTube.
I never lost it, man. I was just at the movies. I went to go see the movie Unsane.
I'm talking about them. Sam,
them. We're talking about them. Okay, good. Hey, I was going to say, I just saw Unsane, which was Steven Soderbergh. He shot the whole movie on an iPhone, and it was fucking brilliant. And then, what do you think about something like Movie Pass?
It's cool. Our friends have it out here. John, I'm pretty sure, has his Movie Pass. So if you're a cinephile and like to see a lot of movies, sure, it seems like a great value deal.
Just for the uninitiated, Sam's not going to be shocked with this, but I have no idea what a Movie Pass is. What is that?
I think it's all right. So it's like a subscription to the movie theater. So for like $7 at the moment, it's like super cheap. You pay that monthly and you get to go unlimited to, I forget whatever stipulations.
That sounds.
But just with one visit, it pays itself off. And I feel like it's a way for them to compete with a home system, a way to compete with Netflix and certain things like
Sam,
that.
Are you sponsored by Movie Pass? Onto something here. Just did a commercial.
I think you guys need to make some money on some ads for Movie Pass.
It's a commercial, if I ever heard one. You kind of touched on it about everyone that was contacting you. You got some emails from the Middle East and other places. Where does this go next? Like, what is the next thing after you conquer Long Island? Where do you go?
There are a few cult companies that are very into the film. They've seen it. And right now for us, we are trying to figure out whether we will ultimately continue just a straight self-distribution, very grassroots, bringing it out. I'm in contact with a lot of universities and other art house theaters across the country. And at the same time, there are the streaming platforms. So it's going to be out on DVD and streaming platforms. We're going to have announcements on our site during the year, which is onceuponasuperhero.com.
We're going to make sure we put up all the links and the trailer and everything you're doing on there.
I appreciate that. Awesome.
But I want to make sure people follow this journey with you because this is very cool. But
yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to say to just kind of, talk to the people and just like let them know, like sell the movie, say anything that anyone that might be listening to this podcast, they might be on the fence about going, might have no idea what we're talking about, until they see the trailer. Anything you'd like to say to them?
So basically, if you want to see something brand new, something very different, that's of very high quality, a completely new experience in a movie theater setting, the way it was really meant to be seen, with a group of people sharing an experience together for a couple of hours. And if you partake in a little buzz or what have not, it's always a good thing to mix in there if you feel free. And come down and really check something out made with extreme passion. And that I assure you and say confidently, if you see a lot of films this year, this will be one that definitely will stick in your head.
That's great. I mean, you got me excited about this movie, and we're going to make sure that we get the word out, and I want to follow what you're doing. So we're going to follow you even after you leave Long Island, and we'll make sure that we put all the information down at the bottom as to what you're doing.
We're going to follow you to California, maybe.
Well, we'll follow you in spirit, and maybe
you guys should
Instagram.
come out here.
But we have, the people that listen to our podcast, Scott, or we interact a lot, and they're always looking for different things and fresh things. Even though, sometimes we talk to band members and bands that have been around for a long time, that people like a lot of fresh ideas, and I've been excited to get to know you a little bit and hear your enthusiasm, the way you approach this whole project. Even just learning a thing or two. It's inspiring. It's exciting. It's what we like on this podcast.
Yeah, like if you like something, like if someone makes art and you see it and you could help them, the best way to just do it is just tell someone about it. You see a good movie, you hear a good song, you watch a good artist, whatever it is, just tell someone who might not know who they are. And that's awesome that we get to do that with you and this movie and all that other stuff.
Well, what's really cool, I am thankful you guys, not just, I know music was the basis, so it's great that you're representing Long Island, giving people that are part of other projects that have Long Island roots a chance to tell other people about it. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you guys for being open on all spectrums and allowing Once Upon a Superhero to hopefully get into some other people's conscience. And at the same time, for your audience, knowing that their music, and to touch on again, this whole soundtrack made by John and Taras is unbelievable. And that alone, coming to hear it in a full 5.1 sound system, Belmore and the Cult Cafe, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a great soundtrack. And your music people, I would love to hear the input after.
On weed.
All right. So absolutely, we're going to look for that. We'll follow up. We have one more thing for you, Scott. So the name of the podcast is If I Ruled the World. And we pose to every guest that very question. If you ruled the world, Scott, what would that look like?
It would be a chill fucking place with really good movies, really good music that was uncompromised, unbrainwashed people, and just much more simpler times.
That sounds about right. Sounds like what it's going to be like at your movie Long Island premieres, to be quite honest. You just described.
Well, hey, if you dig that, make sure you come on down. Huntington and Belmore, I'm going to be there myself, and I would love to meet anybody and certainly hear any input afterwards. To us, more importantly than money or anything else, it's people really seeing this film and getting the chance to experience it, because that, when we set out, is more important to us than anything else.
All right, Scott, we will see you on I think we worked it out. Sam's going on the 6th. I'm going on the 7th, but we will see you, and we'll catch up. We'll talk some more. And
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to seeing you there.
All right,
yeah, definitely.
Scott, take care.
Bye. Okay, bye-bye.
Enjoy this life while you can, for we are not alone in this galaxy. For on December 21st, the sun will produce a massive solar flare headed directly to this planet, destined to do one thing and one thing only: to destroy the Earth.
If you don't mind me asking, what happened to you? I've always wondered how somebody can just get, down and out.
My experience on this planet has been quite an unpleasant one.
Where you from anyway? Oh, let me guess, the sun.
Solar flare, I like that. Solar flare. Where you get that from, like a comic book?
Hold on. You're starting to lose me here.
I used to be the galaxy's greatest superhero with unstoppable superpowers. Now look at me.
If I ruled the world,
I love 'em, baby.